This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
For someone to say, "You're so strong, I don't know how you do it." Well, we don't have a choice. When a crisis hits you personally, your family, you rise up, you do everything you can, right? Out of love. And we didn't have a choice. And yes, I could have run away, but I didn't. I chose to stay, and I chose to rise up and do everything possible to be the best caregiver.
Caring for aging parents or other loved ones while working, raising children, and trying to live your own life? Wondering how to find the time for your personal health and happiness? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast, the show where real family caregivers share how to be happy and healthy while caring for others. Now, here's your host, family caregiver and certified caregiving consultant, Elizabeth Miller.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast, which is part of the Whole Care Network. If this is your first time listening, welcome. This is a show produced bi-weekly to help family caregivers integrate self-care and caregiving into their lives. Each episode has an accompanying show notes page, so if you'd like more details about the topics, products, and resources we speak about, or you want to see the related photos, you'll find the show notes by going on the website, happyhealthycaregiver.com, and underneath the podcast menu, click the image or episode number for the show. The link is also going to be available in your podcast episode's description on whichever podcast platform you are listening to this show on. Come cruise with me and some of my fellow care advocates in October of 2025. We've planned this respite-filled self-care at sea cruise with family caregivers in mind. We have removed a few of the barriers we know caregivers could have. We're giving you lots of notice, over a year, to make a plan for your care recipient to have backup care, an affordable rate with a payment plan option, and just enough activities to connect with your caregiving community without interrupting the rest and fun we know that you need. It's a Norwegian cruise on one of their new ships called Aqua. We're going to some great destinations, including the Dominican Republic, U.S. and British Virgin Islands, and the Bahamas. I hope you'll make memories with us on the Self-Care at Sea cruise in the fall of 2025. You're not only going to get the much-needed energizing vacation, but return home with a lifeline of support and community. You can learn more at bit.ly/HHC Self-Care Cruise. I'll also link to this in the show notes. And if you decide to book, don't forget to choose Happy Healthy Caregiver as the answer for the question, how you heard about the cruise. By the way, if you're a business looking to become a sponsor for this special Self-Care at Sea cruise, reach out to me and I can share the sponsor opportunities we have. I'd like to thank our episode sponsor, Rare Patient Voice. Do you want to earn cash in exchange for your opinion? Rare Patient Voice, or RPV, helps connect researchers with patients and family caregivers for over 700 diseases and conditions. For patients and caregivers, RPV provides the opportunity to voice their opinions to improve medical products and services while earning cash rewards. Rare Patient Voice, helping patients and caregivers share their voices. If you're interested, join the RPV panel at rarepatientvoice.com/Happy Healthy Caregiver. I recently finished The Keeper of Happy Endings by Barbara Davis, and I gotta tell you, this is an enchanting novel about fate, second chances, and really hope. It tells the story of two women whose lives are intertwined despite being decades in age apart. These two creative women find community and support through each other, which is a theme that resonates deeply with me as a family caregiver. The Keeper of Happy Endings earned 4 out of 5 stars for me. I'll link to it in the show notes if you'd like to check it out. My favorite thing is, I think maybe it deserves some kind of round of applause, frankly. I finished all 12 seasons of Call the Midwife on Netflix, and these episodes were longer than 30 minutes. Yes, it did take me a long time to go through them. I found this show to be some self-comfort for me while I was eating lunch or hanging out by myself, so really just needing an opportunity to check out for a bit. Call the Midwife is a British drama series based on the memoirs of Jennifer Worth. It's set in the late 50s and 60s in an impoverished East London. The show follows the lives of midwives and nuns at Nonarta's house, and it's a nursing convent. The series highlights their daily challenges and triumphs as they provide medical care and support to the impoverished community, and they deal with really issues that happened, such as childbirth back in the times and poverty and societal changes with medicines and drugs and different procedures and treatments. And honestly, I think you're going to fall in love with the characters. I'm anxiously awaiting season 13. I'll link to the show on Netflix so you can check it out. Let's meet today's caregiver in the spotlight. Jessica Patay, a reformed perfectionist and dedicated caregiving mother, provides compassionate support and resources to other moms caring for children with disabilities or unique needs. In this episode of the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast, Jessica shares how she manages and supports her son Ryan, who has a rare genetic condition called Prader-Willi syndrome, while maintaining her own well-being at the same time. We discussed helpful and unhelpful language from friends and family and explore the various ways caregiving mothers can find support through Jessica's community, book, podcast, and retreats. Jessica also highlights the difference between self-care and self-comfort. Enjoy the show. Hi, Jessica. Welcome to the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast.
Hi, Elizabeth. It's so good to be with you.
It's so good to be with you. I've been wanting to spotlight more stories like yours, and so I'm just so grateful for you and the time that you are committing. I know you're seizing the day before it seizes you, so I really appreciate our time together, Jessica. And we always kick off the show with some, this is a very fancy jar. It's called the Happy Healthy Caregiver jar. And in it is like 150 quotes and sayings and things that inspired me as a caregiver. And then I created it as a product. So I gave it to my sister when we transitioned care from my mom, from me as the primary to her. And then I used to stuff it full of other quotes and stuff when I would go see them. I'd just be like, oh, I'm going to put more in there. And sometimes I'd write in my own things too. And so now it can be a gift. It can be a gift for other caregivers. But let's see what the jar is going to pull out for you today, Jessica. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Okay. It says, be strong enough to stand alone, smart enough to know when you need help, and brave enough to ask for it.
That's good. Be strong enough to know when you have to stand alone.
Strong enough to stand alone, smart enough to know when you need the help, and brave enough to ask for it. So I think we think that like be asking for help is like failing. Did you feel like that?
I don't, but I think our culture teaches us this. And so I am always reminding moms that this is not a one person, 2-person job. You know, exponential motherhood requires exponential support, and we have to ask for help. I mean, just parenthood alone is a lot.
Yeah.
It is a lot. And we're made to feel that we need to do it alone. This country and culture of values independence and, you know, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps alone. But that is a fast track to burnout.
Yeah. Yeah. Even the front part of this, like be strong enough to stand alone. Like, I don't even necessarily love that, but I love the best of it. The smart enough to know when you need help, brave enough to ask for it, I think is the critical part of this. And well, let's get into your story, Jessica. Like, tell us a little bit about, you know, how caregiving entered your life.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I say that my second son, Ryan, is the one that made me a caregiver. A little bit about my family. I've been married to my husband, Chris, for 27 years. We have 3 kids in the adult-ish phase of life. My oldest is 23 and is finishing up last semester of school, college. And then Ryan is 21. He has a year left in the school district who's in the transition program. And then I have a daughter, Kate, who is 18 and working and taking classes. So yes, that phase of life. You think it gets easier, and in some ways it does, but it has its own challenges and
Yeah, it
delights.
does. I love how you
For
say
sure.
adult-ish. It's like, yeah, they want to be treated as adults, but then there's certain situations you're like, oh yeah, no, you really still are tethered in many ways. It is exciting though when they get off the payroll. I'm going to tell you, like our
Can't
youngest
wait
just
for
got off
that.
the payroll, and we felt like we got a raise. It was amazing. Well, so your second son, Ryan, is now
Yep.
21, but still in the
Mhm.
school system, you said. How did you realize that Ryan was neurodivergent in some ways?
So right away, when he was born, he could not cry, he couldn't suck. He didn't wake up to eat. He didn't cry because he had a wet diaper. In fact, he didn't cry his whole first year of life. So we
Wow.
spent a month in the hospital not knowing what was wrong. There were medical issues going on, and we had no idea. And this is before smartphones. So I wasn't looking up anything. And even the 2 nights that I slept in my own bed, I did not go to the computer to Google because I was just really trying to protect my mind and heart. But my husband Googled the symptoms that were told to us, failure to thrive and hypotonia and so on. And he found Prader-Willi syndrome, which is a rare genetic disorder. And so thankfully we did get an early diagnosis. Ryan was 5 weeks of age when our pediatrician called to tell us. And Prader-Willi syndrome, I always say there's no cocktail party explanation. There's no short explanation. Yeah. So I'll do my best. But when you're born with low muscle tone, all your milestones are delayed. Ryan didn't walk till he was 3, which was even slower than the average in PWS. And he was on growth hormone starting in infancy, which is a great help. And it is the only medication currently indicated for Prader-Willi syndrome. So again, milestones are the focus in the early years, OT, PT, speech, those services carried on all the way into high school. And if PWS makes the news, it's because there's an insatiable food drive that kicks in childhood. So kids are academically, cognitively, emotionally, psychologically affected. And there's this food drive that kicks in childhood. So by the time Ryan was 13, the food drive was so increased that we needed to lock our kitchen. I thought we would have to lock our kitchen when he is 5. When you read about PWS and you see the really crazy array of symptoms, you've got medical, you've got, behaviors and anxiety, and you've got this food drive. Like, what? Are you kidding me? This is a thing. This is an actual thing, and it's life-threatening. Kids and adults with this syndrome pass away from overeating because they don't have the gag reflex. Most people, if they eat themselves sick, they will throw up.
Yeah.
In PWS, there's no gag reflex. So kids and adults will rupture their stomach. It leads to premature death. It's just terrible, right?
Wow.
It's terrible. So we are very vigilant. I am very vigilant. I am always checking the kitchen because I'm not the only person who lives here with Ryan. I'm not the last person to go to bed. So I'm always checking. And he will notice that 1 second that somebody walks away from the fridge to go to the bathroom or gets distracted, and he'll grab something. So we have to be very vigilant. Thankfully, we didn't have to lock up till he was 13. And by the time he was 16, we had to become extremely, extremely vigilant.
What does life look like for him, like as a 21-year-old now? And for you too, like as the caregiver for him and the parent.
Thank you. So, Ryan is pretty impacted. He cannot be left alone ever. I mean, can he be in his room alone? Can he be in the family room alone? Can he be in the back room or backyard? Yes, those kinds of things. But he will never be at the house without somebody watching him. We probably knew by the time he was in 3rd or 4th grade that he wasn't going to get his high school diploma. And he's a deep soul, and he's compassionate, and he's intuitive, and he's a sweetheart and a ball of anxiety. So I would say in our day-to-day lives, certainly managing the food drive, how that looks like besides living with a locked kitchen is we don't go to restaurants as a family, hardly ever. We did for his 21st birthday. Um, Grandpa might take him out for his birthday. His brother just took him out for his birthday. But as a rule, we try to avoid parties, restaurants. We don't do family vacations anymore, all five of us, because his anxiety is so high. It's irrational, but he becomes really insecure, like he's not going to get fed on a trip. Now, one-on-one with me or one-on-one with Chris, my husband, he does pretty well. So we will try to do those one-on-one trips with him because we do those trips with my other kids,
Nice.
or the four of us without Ryan. He goes to the transition program during the school year. So, kind of like a school day, Monday through Friday. Summers, he has summer school, which is only a Band-Aid. It's, 20 half days of the summer. And when he hits 22, which will be June 2025, he will end his time in the school district. And that transition feels the scariest. All transitions, I think, are scary for caregiving parents. And this one is a big one because we've had a plan for so many years. And once he exits the school district, there isn't a solid plan. It's something that we have to create, research, work really hard, and hope and pray that it works and that he's in a good situation.
I wish there was more. That's a long time of life, right? From that age of 22 till, long out into the future. Like, I really wish, and as a sibling of somebody who needs that, also those support systems in some ways, like we're failing, I think, as far as our adult systems go there. I want to kind of wheel back a little bit, Jessica, to the early part when, the diagnosis and what that was like for you, navigating that grief, really. And you called it, I think, altered motherhood. Somewhere I read that. Yeah. What was that
Yes,
like?
I do call
How
it
did you
that.
kind of, come to accept this huge life change that just was put in front of you on the day of birth?
It was devastating. It was just so shocking. I mean, just such a it wasn't like, well, your child has diabetes, and that is not to minimize diabetes, but
Yeah.
I could wrap my head around that,
It's
right?
not a rare disease. Yes.
Right. It's
Right.
not a rare disease, but here we are with this really rare disease with this really weird combination of symptoms. And I was a perfectionist. I went into marriage, with such crazy high ideals and expectations because I came from a really unique is just the nicest way to say it, unique family situation. And I wanted to create this like perfect little nuclear family
Oh,
with traditions and, everyone's close and committed and no divorce and just all of it. Right. So I went in with, such high ideals of what I wanted to create. And it just was shattered with the diagnosis. And so, yes, I grieved. Yes, I I was just so full of fear and what ifs and anxiety. Thankfully, my husband and I got plugged into support groups right away for the diagnosis. There were
okay,
support
good.
groups in our area in Los Angeles. It was unbelievable that we found something so close by. So immediately we got connected to other families. We made friends with other couples, and it really, really relieved us to
Mm.
know that we were not alone.
Yeah, you
And
have someone
so
to
that
bounce his
helped.
ideas off of. What's the name of, is there an organization that's kind of helps with the support for this diagnosis?
Yes. So where we live in California, there's a foundation called Prader-Willi California Foundation, pwcf.org. And then there's a national organization, Prader-Willi Syndrome Association, that is based out of Florida.
Okay, good. I will
And
link to those for sure.
thank you.
In
Thank
case
you.
somebody's listening. And then, I'm sure too, as you were grieving this and kind of, sharing your news with the world and throughout the years, these 21 years of being Ryan's mom and Ryan's caregiver as well, like what are the things that people, like your pet peeves about what people say or like preferred language? Because I think that's all something, it does change over the years, I feel like. And so if we're asking you, Jessica, like what are your pet peeves about the things that people say and the things that they could offer or say better?
Well, I would say when people say God only gives special kids to special parents, that's not helpful at all.
No.
And then you're just minimizing the parents who have neurotypical children, right? I think when people say God doesn't give you more than you can handle, I don't believe that. I don't think it's sound. I think people just try to offer things to make you feel better. I think they're well intentioned, but they are not helpful at all. For someone to say, wow, you're so strong, I don't know how you do it, sounds like such a compliment. Again, I would rather someone acknowledge, wow, this must be quite a difficult and challenging journey. How can I offer support?
Amazing.
Or I would like to support you. I would like to walk through this with you. Or I admire you and I would like to learn from you. You know, something else other than you're so strong, I don't know how you do it. Well, we don't have a choice. When a crisis hits you personally, your family, you rise up, you do everything you can.
Yeah.
Right. Out of love. And we didn't have a choice. And yes, I could have run away, but I didn't. I chose to stay and I chose to rise up and do everything possible to be the best caregiver.
Right. I appreciate you saying all of that because I think, it is probably well-intended, but until we kind of know better, we don't do better. And so maybe this will kind of catch people's tongue before they say out. I'm glad that you found your community initially, but then you essentially created your own community. And tell us a little bit about that journey, how that came about.
Thanks. So I created We Are Brave Together. It's a nonprofit organization that's been around for 7 years. And our intent was to combat the isolation, loneliness, and burnout and compassion fatigue that caregiving moms face. And so we launched with a support group in person in Southern California and started off with 1 retreat per year. And we have grown from there to then offer what we call connection circles or our support groups. We have them all across the United States, virtual and in person. We have grown from offering 1 retreat per year, a weekend retreat that we subsidize 75 to 100% the cost, from 1 to 10. So we've grown tremendously, and we have our own podcast called Brave Together Parenting. And so we're just all about preserving and protecting the mental health of caregiving moms. And, when I switched from why me to what now, then I was open to the possibility that something meaningful and beautiful could come out of crisis or chronic hardship or this awful diagnosis that was delivered. And that shift just left me very open and waiting for some idea to fall. And the idea landed.
I love that. We talk sometimes as a coach, like about for caregivers, about worrying and how worrying is just really not very productive and fear-based type thing. And it really is action that can help you move out of that space of like worry and fear. And that's essentially what you did, Jessica. And starting We Are Brave Together it's, what now? What action can I take? Like rolling up your sleeves and kind of that pragmatic, practical of like, okay, this is where I am. How am I going to move forward? And and wouldn't it be fun to kind of take people with me? Like, let's do this together.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I know that caregiving moms are exhausted and overwhelmed. So I thought if I create community and they can show up, and if all they do is participate in our, private Facebook group, because it's a great way to connect or ask questions or seek resources, great. If you're able to jump into a connection circle or come to a retreat, even better. And if, maybe you want to listen to the podcast because it's just inspiration and practical resources in your ears and that's accessible and easy, wonderful. We're just trying to put out content in all different kinds of ways to really support moms. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's relatable. And in your story of why me to what now also is very relatable for me. And kind of the timing's pretty close. Like I founded in 2015. So we were kind of on the same thing. Well, I love the idea too of retreats and things like that. We're taking a group on a cruise next year called Self-Care at Sea. So I'm excited about that. And I think that it's more than just about the respite. it's about the lifeline that happens when you are in this, like, and I've been a guide for caregiving retreats with Brutally Beautiful is another organization that I'm affiliated with. And, you see all these people kind of come in and they are brave, right? Just in showing up. Like a lot of them don't necessarily know one another, right? And they're coming in and then they get very transparent and vulnerable. And as guides, and I'm sure you do this too, Jessica, you are being vulnerable to so that they feel safe to do that. And then you leave, right, with this lifeline of caregiving community. And that's very sustainable.
Yes, yes, it is sustainable. And it doesn't mean you have to have, 10 people that you're keeping up with. If you have one or two people that are in your corner that are part of your lifeline, I love that phrase because it is a lifeline. We are a lifeline to each other. Whatever shared lived experience, whether it's loss or divorce or death or caregiving or I don't know, a terrible accident, right? We have to have people in our life who understand. We have to have people who get it, is what I always say. Girlfriends who get you are sacred and mandatory. And it's just comforting. It's transforming. Yeah. So that cruise sounds amazing. And I mean, yes, the treat to get away and have a break from caregiving is really, really important to have some space away, which is why we created our retreats. And you feel like you leave with a whole new group of dear, close friends.
Yes. And you're just someone you could send a quick text to and maybe they're new to this food drive problem and they can text Jessica and be like, oh my gosh, help me, and then you're like, do this, help, try this, try that. And I mean, that is to fast track people to the resources and just to listen. Amazing. Yes. Amazing. Yes. We'll talk about your podcast too. I love that you're fellow podcast hosts and it's called Brave Together. What makes it unique or special?
Well, we launched it during 2020. It was actually in the works before the shutdown. Thank goodness.
Yes.
Because it was a way that we could offer content that was accessible because, we're all about the power of gathering and gathering in person mostly. And then that was taken from us. So I'm so glad we were able to launch the podcast in 2020. It's gone through different seasons of different types of episodes. And right now we have Ask Us Anything episodes with a clinical psychologist and a coach, both who are also fellow caregiving moms, Dr. Zoe Shaw and Susanna Pace-Lavelle. And so we offer Ask Us Anything episodes. We offer story episodes. So a mom, a dad, a sibling can submit a story, 500 to 700 words. And then we have them actually record themselves telling the story. And then we interview the writer and splice it all together beautifully for our story episodes. We also have our practical episodes, our expert episodes that we invite a coach, an advocate, an attorney, an expert in some way to talk about a particular topic. And then something new for season 7 is our Thriving Adults. So we're interviewing adults with disabilities and hearing how they're thriving. What do they want to tell parents?
I can't wait.
So
that's so exciting. Well, I mean, that was a whole lot of stuff that makes it special and unique. And I look forward to listening because, we mentioned before the show, like I'm a sibling caregiver, support caregiver for my brother. And it is a totally different path to navigate resources and help for him. And, he does not have like a really clear diagnosis. It's like intellectual developmental disability is very broad diagnosis, but he certainly has a lot of behavior and things I think that would help us. So I'm going to be a new follower and listener for that. And you credited with the superpower of honesty and truth telling in the trenches of motherhood. Like what is, and I love that because people need that space to be really, really transparent and honest. Like what are one of your truths about motherhood that that has been well received, I think, by your community?
Well, one thing I audaciously say is that, it's okay to say my kid is awful and my kid is amazing and my kid is awful again, it's okay. It's okay to have days where I don't really like my child
Yeah.
because I'm struggling with their behaviors. I'm struggling with this, that, or the other. It's okay to say that. It doesn't mean you don't love your child. It doesn't mean you're not a fierce advocate for your child. It doesn't mean you lack compassion, but you're human.
Yeah.
You are human and you're allowed to be human as a parent, as a caregiver. Something else I say is that just because we grieve the diagnosis or the disability or the impact on your child's life and your family's life doesn't mean you don't love your child.
Yes. Yeah. I phrase that kind of too, like as two things can be true at the same time.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like, the year of 2014 in particular was like a crazy spiral year for our family. And yeah, there was a lot of really cool stuff that happened in that year too. So it's like not an all or nothing type of mentality. And to your point, like we're not robots. We show up differently. And I know sometimes I don't even like myself. So it's okay to like, other people, where you don't want to be in your own skin. Well, you've put together a project for you and other folks in similar situations. Um, it's an anthology. I love an anthology where you get a lot of different types of voices called Becoming Brave Together, Heroic and Extraordinary Caregiving Stories from Mothers Hidden in Plain Sight.
Yeah,
Tell us
here it
about
is.
this. Yes, Becoming
Yeah.
Brave Together. Tell us more.
Well, I'm a writer and a lover of words, and I had this idea of really, you know, gathering a collection of stories and not just mine. And yes, someday I will do my own book, but I've had the privilege of using my voice for many years, and I wanted to give that opportunity to my fellow caregiving moms because I'm all about supporting and elevating my fellow women and mothers. And so also, I know that the impact of hearing 22 stories versus one of my, a book just of my stories can have a really powerful ripple effect.
Mm.
I think this is my own, I'm not a psychologist, but this is my own little psychological theory is that when we know one person in our life who has a child with a disability or medical complexity or even mental health struggles, we only know that one person. It's really easy for us as the family or friend to minimize the
Yeah.
intensity and severity of what they're going through as a parent. But here you have a book sharing 22 stories representing different diagnoses, different ages of children, and it is eye-opening and heart-opening. And this is, the feedback that we're getting from family and friends and strangers. I didn't know. I never knew. I never realized. Wow. So I am excited to have these writers, one, be validated as parent caregivers and be validated as writers, but really to share this with the world. And hopefully they just have a little more grace and compassion and support for caregivers.
I love that. I think this would be a great book for fellow moms, caregiving moms like yourself, or people who are working with children with different abilities, and coming in contact with people with different, like it's I wish the people at my brother's bingo hall would read it. Like
Yes.
yes, it's so frustrating. He recently got kicked out of bingo, Jessica. Like it's so heartbreaking because
Ugh,
yeah, people just don't get it.
they
Um,
don't.
talk about let's change gears here for a second, and I'm going to link to the book, of course, and I put it in the Amazon store under caregiving books too, because there's, like you said, we don't have time to kind of like go looking through all of these different resources. So we're going to help fast track you through the, Happy Healthy Caregiver Amazon store to the caregiving books that we feel like could potentially fit your situation. I also have a curated page, like a different caregiving communities. So whether you're sandwich generation, dementia, and so for moms and dads, or someone filling that mother or father type of role for folks, and kids, and even people like myself, who I'm kind of like, I'm not a parent to my brother, but it's like somebody, now that our parents are deceased, we have to kind of play that role. So
Yep.
kind of curating those resources, and I'm happy to kind of include that in that space as well. We're going to switch to self-care type of thing, because like that's this is where the magic happens, Jessica's like, you've lived through, 21 years so far of raising kids alone is tough. And then you've got a kid that needs more love and attention in some ways from you. So we want to know how you've infused the self-care. So what did it look like in early days? Like, what do you tell your moms who are young at this and trying to figure out how to infuse some time for themselves? Where do they start?
Well, I always tell moms who are early in their journey to ask for help from the beginning. Expect, if you have a spouse or a partner, expect that they're going to be hands-on and helpful. Don't assume, whether you're working or a stay-at-home mom, that it all falls on you. I mean, that is our culture, right?
Yeah.
That the mom is usually the default parent, caregiver. But I would say ask for help from the beginning so that you establish from the beginning a routine of taking breaks for yourself and be intentional. Really think about, am I engaging in self-care, which is investing in practices that support your mental health, help you access joy, help you access peace. Or are you engaging in self-comfort, like getting your nails done or, watching Netflix and having a glass of wine? Nothing wrong with self-comfort practices, but they will not sustain you for the long haul.
That's right.
Of caregiving or just even parenthood. Parenthood is hard on its own. So I encourage you to really evaluate what you're doing and what is actually helping you. I say practices like meditation, prayer, journaling, movement, exercise, creative practices help you access joy and peace, whether that's, cooking, reading, ceramics, whatever. It could be anything. If golf is your thing, it doesn't really matter. Like, the list is endless. But even before that, you have to really believe that you deserve to invest in your own mental health as a human being. You have to believe that, or any ideas that you or I come up with for self-care for our audience, it doesn't matter. But you have to believe you're worthy of investing in, and it is not selfish to invest in your own mental health.
No, it's critical, especially, we're not talking about they say the average caregiver is a caregiver for 4.5 years, but in the case of yours, Jessica, and many other moms and dads out there, like, when you give birth to a child that needs special care, like, that's a lifetime of care needs.
Right.
So that's a recipe for burnout. If you think that this is a solo caregiving thing, that's not going to work. And so finding the people, finding the technology, finding the different systems. And I think I'm sure that's what your community is also offering, is a lot of tips about that. And I love that your definition of self-care, I've never really looked it up to see what it says in the dictionary, but I love that you make the distinction between self-comfort and self-care, because people will say, oh, I need the glass of wine for my self-care, but you're right. Like, that's not self-care. Actually, that's not so great for us in the long run. But it could be comforting. But for me, I define self-care as anything that is going to give me energy, it's going to provide peace of mind, or is just pure joy.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you add anything to that to align with your definition?
I think that's perfect. I think anything that helps you access playfulness and joy and peace, groundedness, that really gives you, I love how you say gives you energy. I'm going to add that to my list, because we need more energy for this role that we're in. And we think sometimes that certain practices might zap our energy, but actually it adds to our energy. And pay attention to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, afterward, do you feel better or do you feel worse? And nothing is a quick fix. So I don't mean that, like, oh, I meditated for 5 minutes and I still have monkey mind and I still have,
like, I feel more energized?
All this anxiety.
Yeah.
No, it's a daily practice.
Yeah.
That will have an effect. It's not a one-time thing. So I think the way you define it is beautiful, and I agree.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I do think it's a lot of trying on clothes and seeing like how does
Hmm.
this work for me, because your idea of self-care and mine is going to be different. I found a link on your site where you have like some bite-sized self-care suggestions. I'm going to put that out there. What do you do that energizes you, Jessica? Like, or what did you do or what do you do now?
Well, thankfully for me, I've always been compulsive about exercise, and I keep meaning to like write a piece on this because it really saved me. Because when I got married and I started having kids and I was running, and when I say running, I mean slow jogging.
Yeah.
Um, I had to, like, I just had to. I had to sweat. I had to exercise. And so, even when motherhood began, I would ask my husband, Chris, like, hey, can I just get a break for, a jog? And because I had to, I couldn't just stop, like, oh, everything stops because I've become a mother. And I didn't want to deny myself something that really energized me, that brought me joy, that helped me sweat out stress. And so I just always continued that practice. Fast forward to now, I'm not running. I thought I would run till I was like 65, but I've stopped.
Then your
I
body's
walk.
like, my body, I'm 53 this week. I was like, my body's like, no, no more of that. Yeah. No
Yeah.
more
I mean,
running, walking. I'm a walker. Yeah.
yeah, I love walking, but I practice yoga, hot yoga,
Me
and
too. Yeah.
I will not skip it. I go at least 3 times a week, and if I can get more in, I will get more in somehow. But I love that. And I definitely love, the Calm app, and I like reading, and I like walks with life-giving friends. All of that is very, very helpful and sustains me for the long haul.
Yeah. And some of them take minutes and some of them take maybe a half hour or an hour, but you're not talking about like huge chunks of time. Do you have a shout out for your yoga studio?
Oh, sure. So the yoga studio that I practice is Kefi Yoga in Torrance, and it's a great community with a wonderful group of instructors. So if anyone is in the South Bay of Los
Yeah.
Angeles and you want to try it out, please try it out.
How do you spell it?
Kefi.
Okay, I just put two F's in there. Well, we'll check that out. I go to a Hot Works. It's like whatever, a boutique studio. And yeah, people would think like you're crazy. That doesn't sound energizing to sit in 120, 125-degree heat and sweat. But I leave there energized. Yeah. Would make sense, right? It's
Yes.
infrared energy and in
Yes.
that particular studio. So shout out for our favorite little yoga places. And I do Pilates and other stuff in that. I can do whatever I want. There's 6 different classes. Or more than that, even 6 studios, 12 classes, I think. What do you all right, I think we should head into the lightning round. So this is my book. It's called Just for You, a daily self-care journal. And writing was very therapeutic for me, Jessica, as a caregiver, to just kind of process and like you can say
Yes.
whatever you want, even if nobody ever reads it. And I wanted to give folks an easy way to try that on to see if it works for them. So written with caregivers in mind, but not necessarily just for caregivers. So I put a couple bookmarks in here. Let's see what you got. Um, name one place you've always wanted to visit.
Ooh, Italy. There's a part of Italy I haven't been to. I mean, I went to Italy 24 years ago. So I haven't been in a long time, but I would love to go to like Positano and the Amalfi Coast, and
Yes.
it just sounds so dreamy.
We did that in 2022. My daughter did a backpacking trip after college and we met her at the end
Wow.
in Amalfi. Don't wait too long, Jessica. That's what I'm going to tell you is like you got to be fit to go to the Amalfi Coast. It is
Okay.
not a place for 80-year-old people who
Oh
have
gosh.
mobility issues. Like you don't
Okay.
see that in the cute little TikToks and all of that, but you got to go 500 steps to the restaurant, 500 steps afterwards to get to the
Okay.
beach clubs and then stay on the
Okay.
beach. That's would be my other tip is like you can always do the water taxis and then you can take the cabs to go and have the amazing views. But I think being on the water level was a lesson learned for us.
Mm,
When you're ready to go, reach out. I'll share more tips with you.
okay.
What are you looking forward to doing like this week
What am I looking forward to doing this
or this
week?
month? It could be, in the near future.
Uh, that is a good question. I'm trying to think about what's coming. Well, I'm excited to do our first retreat in Savannah, Georgia, actually. We're
Yay for
going, yes,
Savannah.
yes, yes, yes. So we've rented a house on Tybee Island. So I'm very excited. I always love to explore a new location for a retreat. And I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, you're gonna love it. And not in July. I hope, it's not gonna be this month, it sounds like. So good for you. It's beautiful. And I went for a sister's weekend. So with my sisters and my cousins who are like sisters, and we had an amazing time. I hope you get to do some karaoke at this little bar that we went to. It was so fun to kind of karaoke where nobody knows you. I love
Oh,
that so much.
oh, great.
Yeah.
Is that Tybee Island
Yeah, it
where
was in
that
Tybee
was?
Island.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
I'm looking that up.
Yes, there's all these little bars and restaurants. So fun. Okay, what is there any new skills that you'd like to develop?
That is a good one. Um, a new skill.
I've been thinking while you're thinking, my daughter made me this wooble.
Uh-huh.
So it's almost like better than a stress ball. And I love bees. My maiden name is Beehee. So she made me this little wooble bee where she was learning how to, I think this is crochet, but like
Okay.
it's kind of inspired me like, oh, maybe I want to learn how to crochet. Um, but yeah, is there anything that you're thinking about?
Well, I mean, I've definitely thought about this off and on. I even like took a couple lessons, but learning to play the guitar, I think would be amazing and really hard. I know it's like really hard to get over the hump, but the desire is still there. I just sometimes think I don't have time for another hobby. I mean, my husband and I should pick up a hobby together before I pick up another hobby for just me. So,
But that
that's
would be
still,
fun. Used
yeah.
to go to guitar lessons with my daughter, and I'd have to sit in the room so that
Yes.
when she was practicing at home, I could be like, "That doesn't sound right," or whatever.
Hmm.
But it did look fun. But you gotta wear those little fingertips. They're gonna get strong.
And you can't
And
have nails.
no nails, which I don't
No
love nails
nails.
anyway. I'm a contact lens wearer, so I would feel like I'm stabbing myself.
Oh,
And then as far as uh, a great sport for maybe both of y'all, I don't know. My husband and I picked up pickleball, and we've been married about the same amount of time that y'all have.
okay.
So has that something you've thought about?
Um, I've thought about it. Okay, my husband grew up playing tennis, and so he would
It's
probably be natural at it. And I did not grow up playing tennis. So it would be a little bit of a struggle for me. I have thought of it, but my husband's obsessed with stand-up paddle. So every Saturday and Sunday, he's out on the water for, a few hours. So I don't really know where we'd fit it in
fit it
because I don't
in.
think we'd want to play in the afternoon per se. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
it depends on the time of year. So afternoons could work maybe on a weekend if we had a sitter. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I thought about it because people do love
It's
it.
fun.
And
And I never
sure, it's
played
great
tennis.
exercise.
And we do have folks on that have played tennis on our tennis team. And I feel like sometimes they're even more challenged in a way because it's different. It's same but different. There's a net,
Yeah.
but the ball's different and everything. All right, last question for you, Jessica, is what do you geek out about?
Oh, words. I just love good writing. I love good books. I love listening to people who are so smart and like, ooh, that was a good word. Um, I certainly geek out about, self-help psychology, personal transformation stuff. So
Yeah,
I love listening to podcasts. I love reading, nonfiction.
good stuff. What is there any works of words that you would recommend
Oh gosh.
or
Um,
like favorite podcasts? Like I would just listen to Julia Louise Dreyfus's podcast this morning, and I literally
so
was
good.
listening to her and thinking she uses good words. So
Yes.
maybe check it out
Yes.
if you haven't.
Oh,
I think the episode I was listening to was with Julie Andrews, but it's a
oh,
little bit also
yes.
about aging well and
Mm,
all of those things to see how they have evolved. Some of these people that we respect, how
yes.
they have evolved
Yes.
and elevated and
Mm,
learn new things.
it's so hard for me to choose like one book or one writer or one podcast. Um, oh, goodness. I should have this like
No
easily
worries.
accessible. Um,
Do you love to play Scrabble? I bet you're good at
I do.
Scrabble.
I
Yeah, I
do
love
love
Scrabble.
Scrabble. I do the Wordle now. I don't know. It took me forever to do Wordle. I thought,
I do the Wordle. It's pretty much part of my daily routine.
yes, it
Um,
is now incorporated into my daily routine. Okay, so some of the top podcasts that I listen to um, for fun would be Armchair Expert, but Dax, who's one of the hosts, you would
yeah.
never realize like how smart he is. He is such a great host. He is asked great questions. He is so knowledgeable about so many things, but then they have, you know, a variety of types of episodes. So that's a fun one. I like listening to, well, I love, love, love How I Built This with Guy Raz, who is a host interviewing entrepreneurs. And
Mm.
it's really, really fascinating. He's a great host. And then he also has an advice line, which I love listening to. Um, I like Laura Tremaine's 10 Things to Tell You podcast. Of course, I listen to a lot of, disability and parenting podcast. I love Dr. Shafali's podcast, even though I am, out of the little kid parenting
Yeah.
stage, I still like listening to, like conscious parenting podcasts. Um,
It affirms and validates like what you went through. Yeah.
it
And how you're
does.
still processing it, I'm sure. Cause like you're processing it while you're changing the tires and washing the windows and all of that. So it's a unique situation for sure. Um, and I appreciate all these recommendations. We'll link to that. So I've listened to a couple of these, but a few of them are new to me. So I'm gonna add them to my queue and kind of put something in there. Sometimes I'm like, why just listen to caregiving podcasts? I need something else. But I'm a big audiobook and
Oh, you
reader too.
are.
So
Oh, that's so good.
I
That's so good.
alternate. Yeah. Sometimes I read and listen. Like I'm like, okay, I'm reading while I'm in bed. Okay, what chapter was on? Update my audiobook, listen to that. Like, yeah, with the
Yes.
Libby app
Yes.
through the library. Amazing. Well, is there anything else, Jessica, that you're wishing that we mentioned? Any parting words of wisdom for caregivers, and then how do people stay in touch with you?
Well, I just want to say you're not alone and you don't have to do this alone. And although caretaking can be a solitary act, you don't have to do this alone. And it's really important to have a few people in your life that are regularly in your life, whether that's over text, over video, over, coffee or a glass of wine, that are life giving and that really understand you and support you fully.
Thank you. Thank you. And how do people find you?
You can find me through our Instagram at We Are Brave Together if you want to send a message. If you are a caregiving parent and you'd like to join We Are Brave Together, just go to our website, wearebravetogether.org. Everything that we offer, you will see on our website. You'll see, our podcast, our book, our connection circles, our retreats. We have scholarships for the retreats. We have a Facebook page. We have a secret Facebook group. So if you are caregiving, you want to get involved, we will help you get involved. We'll help you find others in your area. And you can always, send any kind of inquiry to hello@wearebravetogether.org.
Amazing. Lots of opportunities for people to kind of get connected and meet them where they are. And Jessica, I know you're living this, but you're also like pulling people on the train with you. Like, let's go, and helping yourself while helping others. And I appreciate what you've put together these past 7+ years. Amazing.
Thank you. It's honestly, it's so joyful. It doesn't really feel like work. I mean, maybe schlepping boxes to a retreat feels like work, but everything else doesn't feel like work. And I feel so lucky to be doing this work and, involved in my fellow caregiving moms' lives.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
If you're a fan of this Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast, then you're going to love Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver podcast, which is also part of the Whole Care Network family. Join sisters JJ and Natalie, who offer a candid, unfiltered space to confess the good, the bad, and the ugly of being a caregiver. From heartfelt confessions to insightful guest interviews, they've got it covered. You'll laugh, cry, and everything in between. Tune into the Confessions of a Reluctant podcast on your favorite podcast platform or visit confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com. Thanks for joining us today on the Happy Healthy Caregiver podcast on the Whole Care Network. As always, show notes that accompany today's episode can be found on my website, happyhealthycaregiver.com. Just look under the podcast menu for today's episode image, and that will take you to the page with the links and information we spoke about today. You'll also find other resources on the website, along with links to purchase the Just For You Daily Self-Care Journal. When you purchase from my website, you'll get a signed copy and for a limited time, free shipping. If you've enjoyed what you heard today, consider subscribing to the show on your podcast platform. It really helps other family caregivers find the podcast, and you'll automatically receive our bi-weekly shows in your podcast listening queue. Maybe while you're subscribing, consider leaving a 5-star rating and review, or just simply talk it up on your social channels. Let's stay connected. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Happy Healthy Caregiver. And until we meet again, please take care of you.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.